It was almost midnight when the tall office tower stood silent against the dark sky. Inside, the echo of footsteps moved slowly across the marble floor. The cleaning crew had already gone home, but one man stayed behind. A single father named Ethan Brooks. Ethan worked as a janitor in one of the biggest companies in the city. Most people who passed him during the day never even noticed him. They were too busy, dressed in suits, holding coffee cups, talking about deadlines and meetings. But Ethan didn't mind. He wasn't there to be noticed. He was there to work, to earn enough for his little daughter, Lily. Every night, after putting Lily to bed with his elderly neighbor, he quietly packed his lunch, wore his faded blue uniform, and walked down the quiet street to the company building. The security guard always greeted him with a nod. "Long night again, Ethan?" he would ask. Ethan always smiled gently and said, "Always." The building was beautiful. Shining glass walls, polished elevators, and golden lights that stayed on even after everyone left. Ethan had learned every corner of it. He knew which doors squeaked, which light switches flickered, and which offices were left messy after long meetings. He often wondered what it would be like to work in one of those fancy offices, to sit behind a desk, wear a suit, and make decisions that could change lives. But that wasn't his world anymore. Years ago, he had been something very different, a firefighter. He used to run toward danger, not away from it. Back then, he had a wife who used to wait for him by the window every time the fire truck left the station. Her name was Grace. She was his everything. They had dreamed of building a small home, raising a family, and growing old together. But one terrible night changed everything. A fire broke out in an old apartment building. Ethan had rushed in to save people trapped inside. Grace, who was a nurse, heard what was happening and ran there too, hoping to help the victims. In the chaos and smoke, she never made it back out. Ethan tried to reach her, but by the time he found her, it was too late. He left the fire department after that. He couldn't bear the smell of smoke anymore. All he had left was his newborn daughter, Lily, and the promise that he would do everything to keep her safe and happy. Now, every night at the company, as he wiped the desks and emptied the trash cans, he often thought about her, about how proud she would be of him for staying strong. He didn't make much money, but he never complained. He had food on the table and a roof over his daughter's head. That was enough. Sometimes, when the hallways were quiet, he would take a short break by the large window on the 15th floor. The city light sparkled below, and he could almost see his small apartment far in the distance. He would close his eyes and picture Lily sleeping peacefully with her teddy bear. That image kept him going every night. One evening, while Ethan was mopping the lobby, a group of people walked past him. They were laughing, talking loudly, and carrying folders. Among them was Amelia Hart, the CEO of the company. She was known for being tough, strict, and incredibly successful. She never raised her voice, but when she spoke, everyone listened. Ethan had seen her a few times before, walking through the hallways in her elegant suits, surrounded by assistants and guards. She never looked down or stopped for small talk. Her world was different from his, full of meetings, power, and success. That night, she walked right past him while talking on her phone. Her high heels clicked sharply against the floor. "Make sure the investors are ready by tomorrow," she said coldly. No excuses. Ethan stepped aside politely and lowered his eyes as she passed. She didn't even glance at him. But he didn't mind. People like her had their own worries. He had his. After she left, Ethan continued cleaning the glass doors, humming quietly to himself. The melody was one Grace used to hum while cooking dinner. It brought him peace. Hours later, when the building was empty again, Ethan took out his small lunchbox, a peanut butter sandwich, and a cup of coffee. He sat on the stairs near the service elevator and looked at the clock. It was almost 1 a.m. He thought about Lily again, how she had asked him that morning, "Daddy, when will you come to my school play?" He had promised to try, but he knew his shift ended too late. He sighed and whispered, "Soon, sweetheart. I'll be there one day." As he ate, he remembered how life used to be when Grace was alive. Their small apartment full of laughter, the smell of coffee in the morning, and how she used to tease him for always being late for breakfast. Those memories hurt, but they also reminded him why he kept going. Ethan never told anyone at work about his past as a firefighter. Most people thought he was just a quiet janitor with tired eyes. But behind that calm face was a man who had seen more fire, pain, and loss than anyone around him could imagine. One night, as he was cleaning the CEO's floor, he accidentally bumped into her assistant, who dropped a pile of papers. Ethan quickly bent down to help pick them up. "I'm so sorry," he said gently. The assistant gave him a quick, awkward smile. "It's okay. Thank you." From behind her glass office door, Amelia watched briefly before turning away. She didn't say anything, but for a second her eyes softened. Maybe she saw something in the way he moved, quiet, respectful, and calm. But she said nothing, just continued working late into the night. By the time Ethan finished his shift, the sky was turning pale. The first light of dawn was spreading through the city. He packed his things, nodded to the security guard, and walked out into the cool morning air. The streets were nearly empty. He walked past coffee shops opening for the day, street sweepers cleaning the curbs, and buses starting their routes. The city was waking up, but for Ethan it was time to rest. When he reached his apartment building, he climbed the narrow stairs quietly and unlocked the door. Inside, the place was small but cozy. The walls were covered with Lily's drawings, stick figures of her and her dad holding hands under a bright sun. He tiptoed into her room. She was still asleep, her little face peaceful against the pillow. He smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Then he changed into his old t-shirt and sat on the couch, exhausted but content. For a moment he thought about how strange life was. Years ago he had saved people from burning buildings. Now he saved every penny to keep a roof over his daughter's head. Yet somehow both felt like acts of courage. He fell asleep on the couch, dreaming of better days. Days when Lily would grow up proud of her father, even if the world only saw him as a janitor. The next evening his routine began again. He dropped Lily off with the neighbor, walked to the tall building, and greeted the guard with a friendly nod. "Long night again, Ethan?" the guard asked. Ethan smiled. "Always," but something felt different that night. The sky was darker than usual and heavy clouds gathered above the city. The wind was strong, carrying the smell of rain and thunder. Inside the building everything looked the same. Shining floors, silent hallways, and rows of dark offices. But fate was quietly preparing something that would soon change both Ethan's and Amelia's lives forever. As he pushed his mop bucket into the elevator, lightning flashed across the sky. The city below seemed to hold its breath. Ethan didn't know it yet, but that night he would be tested once again. Not as a janitor, but as the man he used to be. He took a deep breath and began his work as usual. The elevator dinged softly as it opened onto the top floor, where Amelia's office was. He didn't know she was still inside, working late despite the storm warning. While he mopped the hallway, he noticed the reflection of city lights in the glass wall. The thunder rumbled again, shaking the windows slightly. He looked outside and saw the rain start to fall, heavy and fast. It reminded him of another night years ago, the night of the fire that took Grace away. He felt a chill run down his spine. He pushed the memory away and focused on the task in front of him. Downstairs, the guard turned up the radio. A weather report said a severe thunderstorm was moving through the area. Ethan decided he'd finish early so he could get home before it got worse. He packed his tools and walked out through the side door. The rain hit him immediately, cold and sharp. He covered his head with his jacket and began walking toward the bus stop. The streets were slippery and cars sped by, their headlights cutting through the rain. He kept his eyes down, thinking only about getting home to Lily. That's when he heard it, the sound of screeching tires and metal crashing. It came from just around the corner. Ethan froze for a split second, then ran toward the sound. Through the rain and darkness, he saw a car smashed into a guardrail, flames starting to flicker from under the hood. The driver was trapped inside, hitting the window in panic. Ethan's heart stopped when he saw who it was. The woman inside the burning car was Amelia Hart, the CEO. The same woman who had walked past him every night without a word. And just like that, the man the world saw as a quiet janitor became something else again. The man he once was. The man who didn't think twice when someone's life was in danger. He dropped his jacket, ran into the rain, and headed straight toward the fire. Rain poured heavily, turning the streets into shining rivers of water and light. Ethan's boots splashed through the puddles as he ran toward the sound of the crash. His heart pounded hard in his chest. The world around him blurred. Only the fire ahead was clear. The car was smashed against a metal guardrail, its hood twisted and smoking. Sparks flew from the engine and orange flames licked up the sides. The smell of burning fuel filled the air. Ethan covered his face with his arm and pushed forward. Inside the car, through the cracked windshield, he saw the driver. It was the CEO, Amelia Hart. Her head was against the steering wheel, but she was moving slightly. She was alive. Ethan shouted, "Hey! Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. The rain poured down, mixing with smoke and steam. Her voice was faint. "Help. The door won't open." Ethan pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was jammed from the impact. Flames started creeping closer from under the hood. The heat was getting worse. He looked around quickly and spotted a metal rod lying near the sidewalk, maybe from the broken guardrail. Without hesitation, he grabbed it, ran back to the driver's side and smashed it against the window. The glass shattered, scattering into tiny pieces. He reached in carefully and unlocked the door from the inside. "Can you move your legs?" he asked. Amelia nodded weakly. "I think so." "Good. I need you to stay calm. I'm going to pull you out." Her eyes widened in fear as the fire grew stronger. "Hurry." Ethan reached in, grabbed her by the arms, and pulled with all his strength. For a second she resisted. The seatbelt was stuck. He quickly reached down, his fingers trembling from the heat, and pressed the release button. The belt came loose. "Now," he said. He lifted her out just as the flames reached the dashboard. She stumbled, her legs weak, and fell into his arms. Ethan carried her a few steps away from the car before laying her gently on the wet pavement. Seconds later, a loud boom filled the air. The front of the car burst into flames. The heat washed over them. Amelia gasped and turned away, her body shaking. Ethan crouched beside her, coughing from the smoke. "You're okay. You're safe now." She looked at him, her eyes wide, her voice trembling. You're the janitor from the building." He nodded, breathing heavily. "Yeah, stay still. Help's coming." Rain kept pouring down, slowly putting out the smaller flames around them. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Amelia's hand gripped his arm. "Don't leave," she whispered. "I won't," he said softly. For a long moment they sat in silence, both breathing hard, both in shock. The city lights reflected off the wet road, flashing red and white as emergency vehicles approached. When the fire trucks and ambulances arrived, Ethan stepped back, letting the firefighters take over. They placed Amelia on a stretcher and began checking her pulse and blood pressure. A paramedic asked, "Sir, are you hurt?" Ethan shook his head. "Just a few burns. Nothing serious." "Sir, we need to check your hands. They're burned." He looked down and saw his palms were red and blistered. He hadn't even noticed until then. The pain started to hit him. He winced but said, "I'll be fine. Just take care of her first." As the paramedics lifted Amelia into the ambulance, she looked around, searching for him. For a moment, their eyes met through the rain. She wanted to say something, maybe thank you, maybe ask his name, but before she could, the doors closed and the ambulance drove off into the storm. Ethan stood there for a moment, soaked and shivering, staring after it. The flashing lights faded in the distance. The firefighters came up to him. "You sure you're all right, sir?" one asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I just need to get home." They offered to take him to the hospital, but he refused. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to see his daughter and rest. When he finally reached his apartment, the rain had stopped. The streets were quiet again, as if nothing had happened. He opened the door slowly so he wouldn't wake Lily. She was asleep on the couch with her teddy bear beside her. The sight of her made him smile even through the pain. He washed his hands under cold water, trying not to make noise. The burn stung badly, but he didn't care. He was just grateful the woman had survived. He sat by the window for a long time, staring at the faint glow of dawn rising behind the city buildings. His mind kept replaying the crash, the sound of metal, the heat of the flames, her terrified eyes. He didn't even know why she had been out driving in such terrible weather. Maybe she was coming back from a late meeting. Maybe she had been in a hurry like always. It didn't matter now. She was alive. That was enough. The next day, the city was buzzing with news. CEO survives car fire thanks to unknown hero, one headline read. Another article said company executive rescued in rainstorm crash. Police seek brave citizen. Ethan saw the headlines on a newspaper stand while walking to the store. He didn't buy one. He didn't need to read it. He knew what had happened, and that was enough for him. At work the following night, people were still talking about it. The security guard stopped him at the door. "Did you hear? Miss Hart was in that car accident. They say someone pulled her out just in time." Ethan smiled faintly. "I heard. They say whoever did it saved her life," the guard added, shaking his head. "Lucky woman. I wonder who that guy was." Ethan didn't answer. He just nodded and went inside. He started his shift quietly, same as always. But inside he felt different. He hadn't thought of himself as a hero in years. Back when he was a firefighter, saving people was part of the job. This time it had been pure instinct, something deep inside him that never really went away. Around midnight, while cleaning the upper floors, he passed by Amelia's office. The lights were off. Her desk was empty. For the first time, the place felt strange and too quiet, too still. He wondered how she was doing. He thought about leaving a note, something small, just wishing her well. But then he stopped himself. People like her had 100 things to think about. She probably didn't even remember his face. A week went by. Ethan continued his routine, working nights and spending mornings with Lily. She noticed the bandages on his hands and asked, "Daddy, what happened?" He smiled. "Just a small accident at work, honey. Nothing to worry about." She frowned and held his hand gently. "Be careful, okay?" "I will," he said, kissing her forehead. One evening, while Ethan was mopping near the lobby, he noticed the sound of heels approaching. He turned and froze. Amelia Hart was walking toward him, wearing a light coat and moving slowly with a cane. Her face looked pale but calm. "Good evening," she said softly. Ethan straightened. "Good evening, ma'am." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're the janitor here, right?" "Yes, ma'am." She nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as if she was trying to remember something. Then her gaze fell on the bandages on his hands. Her expression changed. "It was you," she said quietly. "That night. It was you who pulled me out." Ethan hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I just did what anyone would do," he said finally. She shook her head. "No, you did more. If you hadn't been there—" Her voice broke slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "I owe you my life." He looked down, embarrassed. "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. I'm just glad you're all right." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt heavy, not uncomfortable, but filled with something unspoken. Gratitude, maybe. Respect. Finally, she said, "I want to thank you properly. Please come to my office tomorrow afternoon." Ethan started to refuse. "That's not necessary." She cut him off gently. "It is to me." She gave a small, grateful smile and walked away. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, wondering what she wanted to say. He wasn't used to attention or praise. All he ever wanted was to live quietly and care for his daughter. The next afternoon, he wore his cleanest shirt and showed up at her office. The receptionist looked surprised to see him but let him in. Amelia was sitting behind her desk, looking much better than before. She stood up as he entered. "Please have a seat," she said kindly. He sat down awkwardly, his cap in his hands. "I've been trying to find you for days," she said. "The police and reporters kept asking who saved me. But you disappeared before anyone could thank you." Ethan smiled a little. "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know," she said softly. "That's what makes it even more meaningful." She reached into a drawer and took out an envelope. "I wanted to give you something, just a small token of gratitude." Ethan looked at it but shook his head. "I appreciate it, ma'am, but I can't take that. I just did what was right." She studied him for a long time. "You're a rare kind of man, Ethan." Hearing his name from her lips surprised him. He hadn't told her. She must have looked him up. She smiled faintly. "You remind me that not every hero wears a suit or has a title. Sometimes they wear a janitor's uniform." Ethan didn't know what to say. He just nodded, grateful and humbled. As he left her office, he felt a strange warmth inside. Not pride, but peace. He had done something good, something that mattered. And though he didn't know it yet, that single act of courage would soon change his life in ways he could never imagine. The next few days passed quietly, but something had changed between them. Every time Amelia passed through the lobby or walked by a hallway, her eyes searched for Ethan. She did. Didn't say anything at first, but her gaze always softened when she saw him. She had returned to work earlier than her doctors advised. The accident had left her with a few bruises, a fractured rib, and a long scar on her wrist. a reminder of the night she almost didn't make it. Her staff treated her with extra care, but Amelia was still the same, strong, composed, and focused. Yet there was something gentler about her now, a kind of quiet gratitude that seemed to show even when she wasn't speaking. Ethan, on the other hand, kept his distance. He didn't want attention or praise. He just wanted to do his work and get home to his daughter. But no matter how much he tried to stay unnoticed, people around the building had begun to whisper about him. They called him the hero janitor. Some said he was a former firefighter. Others said he had saved more people before. Ethan never confirmed anything. When someone tried to ask, he just smiled and changed the subject. One evening, as he was cleaning the hallway outside the CEO's office, Amelia stepped out of her room. She was walking more steadily now, no longer using the cane. She looked at him and said, "Ethan, do you have a moment?" He straightened, a little surprised. "Of course, ma'am." "Come in for a second," she said gently. Inside her office, the air smelled of coffee and faint perfume. The large windows showed the city glowing under the night sky. Amelia motioned for him to sit. He hesitated, but then sat on the edge of the chair. She looked at him quietly for a moment, her hands folded. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," she began. "It's strange, how everything can change in just a few seconds." Ethan nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Life can turn fast." She gave a small smile. "Please call me Amelia." He hesitated again, but nodded slightly. "All right, Amelia," she continued. "You know, I've spent years chasing goals, my meetings, deadlines, company targets. I never slowed down. I never thought much about the people working behind the scenes, people like you. That night made me realize how much I take for granted." Ethan looked down at his hands. "We all have our own roads," he said quietly. "You built this company. That takes courage too," she tilted her head. "Maybe. But courage isn't just about running a business." She looked at him with deep sincerity. "You ran into a fire for someone you barely knew. That's real courage." He smiled softly but didn't say anything. After a moment, she asked, "Do you still feel pain in your hands?" "Just a little," he said, flexing his fingers. "It's healing fine. I spoke to HR," she said. "I want you to take a few days off, paid leave. You deserve it." He shook his head quickly. "That's kind, but I can't. I need the hours. I've got my daughter to think about." She paused, then smiled faintly. "You're a single father, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "My little girl's name is Lily. She's 6. Her expression softened. "She's lucky to have you." Ethan looked up at her, his eyes kind but tired. "I'm the lucky one." Amelia leaned back in her chair, studying him. She could see there was more to this man than anyone realized. There was a quiet strength, a calmness that came from pain and experience. She asked gently, "You used to be a firefighter, didn't you?" He froze for a second, then nodded. "A long time ago. What made you leave?" she asked softly. He took a deep breath. His eyes shifted to the window, where raindrops began tapping softly against the glass. "My wife," he said quietly. "She was a nurse. There was a fire one night, an old building. She ran in to help someone before I could stop her. I tried to reach her, but—" He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "She didn't make it." Amelia's eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, still looking out the window. "After that, I couldn't do it anymore. The smell of smoke, the sound of sirens, it was too much. I had Lily to care for, and I couldn't risk her losing both parents." Amelia sat in silence for a while, not knowing what to say. Then softly she said, "You've been through a lot. Most people would have given up, but you didn't." Ethan gave a small, sad smile. "When you have someone who depends on you, you don't have the choice to give up." There was a long, thoughtful pause. The rain outside grew heavier, filling the room with a soft rhythm. Finally, Amelia said, "Ethan, you've reminded me of something important, that people matter more than success. I used to think strength meant being untouchable, keeping my distance. But you showed me real strength is kindness." Ethan looked at her, slightly embarrassed. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," she said firmly. "Most people wouldn't. You did." For a moment, neither spoke. Then her assistant knocked gently and stepped in, saying her car was ready. Amelia stood and smiled at him. "Thank you for talking with me. I hope you'll let me do something for you and Lily soon." Ethan stood too, shaking his head. "You already did, ma'am." "You reminded me that good people still notice." Amelia smiled warmly. Then maybe we both reminded each other. After she left, Ethan stood by the window for a while, watching her car drive off into the wet night. Something about the conversation had stirred old memories. The good ones, the ones he used to hide behind his work. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. The next few weeks passed quickly. Amelia returned fully to her duties, but she often found herself thinking about the janitor who had saved her life. Every time she passed by him, she greeted him with a smile, something no one in the company had ever seen her do before. Her staff noticed the change, whispering among themselves about how different she seemed. Ethan noticed too, though he didn't quite understand it. He wasn't used to being seen, but now people smiled at him more. Some even said thank you when he held the elevator door open. It felt nice. One Friday evening, as Ethan was finishing his shift, a car pulled up outside the building. It was Amelia's driver. The man stepped out and said, "Mr. Brooks, Miss Hart asked if you could come upstairs for a moment." Ethan hesitated. "At this hour?" "Yes, sir." "She said it won't take long." He wiped his hands on his cloth and took the elevator up. When he entered her office, Amelia was sitting by the window with a cup of tea. There were no papers, no laptop, just her looking out at the city lights. "Ethan," she said with a smile, "I'm glad you came. Sit with me for a moment." He sat across from her, unsure what to expect. She said softly, "You probably think I'm strange for calling you up so late, but I wanted to tell you something. I visited the hospital today. The doctor told me I was lucky. Another few seconds and I wouldn't be here." He looked at her quietly, saying nothing. She went on, "I keep thinking about that, about how fragile everything is, and how somehow a man who had every reason to walk away decided to risk his life again." Ethan shrugged. "I didn't think. I just acted. That's what makes it remarkable," she said. There was silence for a while. The sound of rain filled the room again, soft and steady. Amelia set her cup down and said, "I want to do something to honor what you did. Something more meaningful than just saying thank you." Ethan frowned slightly. "You don't have to do anything." "I know," she said, smiling gently. "But I want to. You see, my company has always focused on profit. After that night, I realized we can do more, on something good. I've been thinking of starting a fund to support families of firefighters and rescue workers. People like your wife. People like you." Ethan stared at her, surprised. "You'd do that?" "Yes," she said. "And I want to name it after your wife, Grace." He blinked, completely still. For a long moment he couldn't speak. His throat tightened. You'd do that for her?" Amelia nodded. "She saved lives. You saved mine. It feels right." Ethan's eyes glistened, but he quickly looked away, pretending to clear his throat. "She'd be honored," he whispered. Amelia smiled softly. "So would I." The two sat quietly, the weight of their words hanging in the air. In that moment, they weren't CEO and janitor anymore. Just two people who had both been through fire, loss, and survival. When Ethan left her office that night, the rain had stopped. The city felt cleaner, fresher. He looked up at the sky where the clouds had parted just enough for a few stars to shine through. He took a deep breath, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Maybe Grace was watching. Maybe she was smiling, proud of him for not letting life harden his heart. When he got home, Lily was waiting by the window, half asleep. "Daddy," she mumbled, "you're late." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "I know, sweetheart, but Daddy had an important talk tonight." "What about?" she asked sleepily. "About kindness," he said softly, "and remembering people who make the world better." She smiled, her eyes closing. "Like Mommy?" He hugged her close. "Exactly like Mommy." As he watched her drift into sleep, Ethan realized something. Sometimes life gives second chances not to change what happened, but to remind us why we keep going, and this time, he wasn't walking alone. Days passed and life seemed to settle into a new rhythm, though something had shifted in Ethan's world. Every time he walked through the building, people looked at him differently. Whispers followed him, not about mistakes or duties, but about courage and heroism. He tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. He couldn't erase what had happened that rainy night. Amelia had returned fully to work, her presence commanding and calm, yet there was a softness now that hadn't been there before. She had taken a moment in her office alone and written something in a small journal, reflections about the night, about bravery, and about the man who had saved her life. One afternoon, she requested a meeting with Ethan again. This time it wasn't about thanking him. She wanted to talk privately, somewhere quiet where she could think out loud. Ethan was hesitant but curious. He had never expected that the CEO would take personal interest in him beyond that night. When he entered her office, Amelia gestured to a seat across from her desk. She was holding a small folder, her hand steady but her expression serious. "Ethan, I want to tell you something," she began. "Something I've never told anyone." He leaned forward slightly, listening. "You probably don't know my full story," she continued. "I wasn't born into this position. I grew up with a family that had resources, yes, but there was a tragedy when I was very young. My younger brother, he went missing for a short time when I was just a child. We were desperate. For days the police searched, but somehow he came back safe, though the details of how he was found were never clear to us." Ethan tilted his head, sensing the importance of what she was saying. "I just remembered," she said softly, almost to herself, "the firefighters who helped back then. There was one name that was mentioned repeatedly, someone who had been instrumental in finding him, but I never knew much else about that person." She looked directly at Ethan now. "And hearing your story, the fire, your wife, your career, and what you did for me, it struck me. The bravery, the dedication, the heart, it felt familiar. And then it hit me. My brother had been saved by the same hero who changed my life." Ethan's eyes widened and he felt his chest tighten. He had heard pieces of this story in the past, but he never connected it to the girl he would one day meet again. Amelia herself. "You're telling me," he said carefully, that I helped your family years ago?" Amelia nodded, her eyes glistening. "Yes, you saved my brother when he was just a child. I never knew who you were then, and now I realize the man who pulled me from that burning car is the same man who quietly shaped the safety of my family before I even existed in my memories of it." Ethan could hardly speak. The connection, the weight of what she was revealing pressed on him. I never knew. I didn't either," she said softly. "But I feel it now. I feel it in my heart. You have a history of bravery, of kindness, and somehow fate keeps putting you in places where you make a difference. First for my family and now for me." He swallowed hard, thinking about the nights he had spent alone, the fire that took his wife, and the quiet life he had built for his daughter. All those years of pain, responsibility, and careful steps had led to this moment. Recognition not just from the world, but from someone whose life he had touched in ways he didn't fully understand. Amelia opened the folder she had been holding. Inside were old photographs and news clippings from the time her brother had gone missing. She pointed to a small image of a firefighter, uniformed and steady, standing near the scene. Ethan recognized the face immediately. Himself, years younger, full of energy, determination, and the weight of responsibility. "You were always there," she said. "Always putting others first, even when it cost you something. And now, you did it again for me." Ethan felt a strange mixture of humility and disbelief. He had acted that night as he always did, instinctively, without thought of recognition or reward. He hadn't expected that his actions would tie into something so personal, so profound in another person's life. Amelia leaned forward. "I don't know if you realize, but what you do goes beyond the immediate. You don't just save people physically and you inspire them. You remind them that courage and kindness still exist in the world. And that matters." Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, a man doing his best to survive and provide for his daughter. But hearing her words made him see his life differently. The sacrifices, the quiet nights, the careful choices, they all had meaning. "I'm not used to praise," he admitted quietly. I just do what I can. And that's why it's remarkable," she said. "Because you don't do it for glory. You do it because it's right, and people notice even if they don't say it aloud." There was a long silence. Outside, the city hummed softly under the afternoon sky. Ethan's mind raced with memories, his wife, the fires, the small apartment with his daughter, every choice he had made to survive and care for Lily. And now, connecting these past moments to the present, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Amelia's voice pulled him back. "Ethan, I want to make sure your daughter knows what an incredible father she has. And I want to do more than that. I want to honor your wife's legacy, too." Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, Amelia. You've already done enough. You don't understand, she said softly, leaning closer. I want to start a foundation. A fund to support families of firefighters, rescuers, and people who risk everything to protect others. People like your wife. And I want to name it after her. Grace. Ethan's breath caught. His throat tightened. You'd do that? I would, Amelia said firmly. She gave everything to save lives, and so did you. It's only right. He stared down at his hands, not knowing what to say. A lump formed in his throat. I don't know what to say. Thank you. That means more than anything. Amelia smiled gently. It's not just for thanks. It's about honoring people who make a real difference. People who act when no one is watching. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers. You really see that in me? I see it in you and in the life you've built, she said. You've carried pain, loss, and responsibility with quiet strength. That's rare, Ethan, and now you've saved me. Twice. He leaned back in his chair, absorbing her words. He had never been comfortable in the spotlight. But for the first time, he understood that the choices he made, even the small ones, even the ones he thought went unnoticed, mattered. They rippled outward in ways he couldn't always see. Amelia continued. I want to personally invite you to help shape this foundation. You know what it means to put others first. You know what it's like to sacrifice for someone else. Your voice, your experience, it can guide us. Ethan's heart raced. He had never expected such an offer. He had spent years surviving quietly, never imagining he could influence something beyond his small world. But now looking into her eyes, he realized that his life could touch more than just his daughter's. It could honor his wife's memory and help countless others. I don't know if I'm the right person, he said softly. You are, Amelia said without hesitation. You've proven that already, and I want you to be part of this, not for recognition, not for glory, just because it's the right thing to do. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. The weight of her words settled over him, and slowly he nodded. All right, I'll help, Amelia's smile brightened. Good, that means a lot to me, and to Grace. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a deep sense of purpose beyond his own survival and his daughter's care. He had been living quietly, almost invisible in a world that rarely noticed him, but now he understood that his actions, small or large, and carried meaning. They had shaped lives he didn't even know about, and now they could create something lasting. As he left her office that evening, the city was bathed in the warm glow of sunset. Rain had cleared the streets, leaving them clean and shining. He walked home slowly, feeling a mix of exhaustion, awe, and quiet satisfaction. When he opened the door to his apartment, Lily ran to him, smiling brightly. Daddy, you're home. He scooped her up, holding her close. I'm home, sweetheart, and I've got some exciting news for you. She tilted her head, curious. What is it? I get to help people, he said softly, just like Mommy did. And I get to honor her memory while doing it. Lily's eyes widened. Like superheroes? Ethan laughed quietly. Something like that. As he held her close, he realized that the moments of courage, loss, and quiet perseverance had led him here. His life had been shaped by tragedy, by duty, and by love. And now it would also be shaped by hope, gratitude, and a chance to make a difference beyond what he had ever imagined. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly at peace. The days after Amelia's revelation felt different to Ethan. Every morning he woke up, seeing Lily's bright eyes and her small smile reminded him why he had kept going all these years. Now he also had a new purpose, to help others, to honor his wife's memory, and to live courageously, not just for survival, but for something bigger. Amelia had kept her promise. The foundation was taking shape quietly, without fanfare but with meaning. They started meeting twice a week, Ethan helping with ideas and structure, and Amelia handling logistics and funding. She insisted he sit at the table as an equal, asking his opinion about every decision. It felt strange at first. He was used to cleaning floors, not making plans for thousands of people. But the more he spoke, the more he realized he understood exactly what people needed. People who risk everything deserve support, he said one evening, flipping through notes. It shouldn't matter if they're famous or unknown. Everyone deserves help, Amelia nodded. You've lived that. You understand it better than anyone I know. The work brought new energy to Ethan's life. Even Lily noticed. Daddy, are you a hero again? she asked one night, her head resting on his shoulder as they read a story together. He laughed softly. I'm just doing what's right, sweetie. But yes, I suppose in some ways I am. Lily's smile was all the reward he needed. She didn't understand the full weight of the foundation or the importance of the work, but she knew her father was helping people, and that made her proud. One afternoon, Amelia called him to her office. Her expression was unreadable serious. Ethan wondered if he had done something wrong. Ethan, she said, closing the door behind him, I want to show you something. She handed him an envelope. Inside were documents, photographs, and letters from families who had benefited from the new foundation. Each story told of courage, sacrifice, and lives changed because someone had helped. Many were families of firefighters, rescuers, and everyday heroes who had risked everything to protect others. Ethan's eyes scanned the stories. Some were heartbreaking, some joyful, and some inspiring in ways he hadn't expected. His hands trembled slightly. This is incredible, he whispered. I can't believe how many people were helping. Amelia smiled. And you're the reason it's happening. Your courage, your example, it inspired this. He shook his head, overwhelmed. I didn't do it for this. I just did what I thought was right. Exactly, she said softly. And that's why it matters so much. People like you make a real difference even when you don't know it. Ethan left her office that evening feeling a mixture of pride and humility. The city outside looked brighter, more alive than ever. The rain had cleared, leaving the streets sparkling under the sunset. He walked slowly, taking in the world, the honking cars, the people rushing home, the smell of fresh rain and earth. When he got home, Lily ran to him. Daddy, did you help more people today? He scooped her up, spinning her around. Yes, sweetie. We're helping a lot of people now. She giggled and hugged him tightly. You're the best daddy. That night, Ethan lay on the couch after Lily had fallen asleep, reflecting on everything that had happened. From the fire that had taken his wife, to the nights spent working as a janitor, to saving Amelia, and now shaping a foundation, his life had been a series of unexpected twists. And yet, all of it had led to this moment, to a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. Weeks passed, and the foundation grew stronger. Families reached out, thanking Ethan and Amelia for the support they provided. He visited some of the families personally, sharing stories, comforting parents, and listening to children who had lost loved ones. Each visit reminded him of Grace and what she had given to the world. One evening, Amelia invited Ethan and Lily to her home for dinner. He was hesitant at first, uncomfortable being in her lavish house, but Lily was excited. Daddy, we're going to see the lady you saved, she exclaimed. The dinner was simple, warm, and filled with laughter. Amelia had prepared homemade food and set the table with care. She made sure Lily felt included, asking her questions about school, friends, and hobbies. Ethan watched quietly, noticing how natural she was, how someone so powerful could still be kind, patient, and caring. After dinner, Amelia handed Ethan a small gift box. Inside was a handcrafted pendant, a simple flame-shaped charm, symbolizing courage and hope. For you, she said, a reminder that your actions, your bravery, light the way for others. Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He rarely received gifts, and this one carried more meaning than anything he had ever owned. Thank you, he whispered, clasping it in his hands. Lily leaned on his shoulder. See, Daddy? You're a hero, he smiled, hugging her close. Only because I have people like you and Grace to remind me why it's important. As the months went by, the foundation began to expand. Amelia relied on Ethan's insight to ensure the help reached the people who needed it most. He found joy in giving advice, seeing families thrive, and knowing that every small action could ripple into something far greater. One day, Amelia invited Ethan to speak at a small event for the foundation. At first, he was nervous. Speaking in front of a crowd was far from his comfort zone. But as he looked out at the audience, families, rescuers, children, and volunteers, he felt a surge of purpose. He spoke quietly but firmly. Life doesn't always give us what we expect. Some of us face loss, fear, and challenges we can't control. But what we can control is how we respond. Every act of courage, every act of kindness matters. And every one of you has the power to make a difference. Just like the people who helped me along the way. Let's honor them by carrying that courage forward. The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Families came forward, thanking him, sharing stories and telling him how his words had touched their hearts. Ethan felt a warmth he had never experienced before, a sense of belonging and impact that went beyond any job or title. Amelia watched from the side, proud and grateful. She had seen Ethan's humility, his quiet strength, and now she saw how his presence inspired others. That evening, as they walked out of the hall, Amelia spoke softly. "You've done more than save me. You've helped countless others see hope. You've created something lasting." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. You helped make it happen too." "Perhaps," she said. "But it started with you. And it reminds me, heroes aren't always who we expect. Sometimes they're quiet, unnoticed, and humble. Sometimes they're janitors," Ethan smiled. "I guess heroes come in all forms." Over time, the bond between Ethan and Amelia grew stronger, built on mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. They were not friends in the usual sense, nor were they colleagues in a traditional way. They were partners in making a difference, connected by the night when courage and fate collided. Lily loved visiting Amelia's office now, playing quietly while Ethan spoke to her team. Amelia often took a moment to kneel down and chat with Lily, asking about school, drawing, and dreams. The little girl adored her, and Ethan felt a profound relief seeing her happy, safe, and inspired by the people around her. One rainy afternoon, while Ethan walked home from the building, he thought about the journey he had taken. From the loss of his wife, to working nights as a janitor, to saving Amelia, and now shaping a foundation. Life had been unpredictable, painful, and beautiful all at once. He realized something important. Courage didn't have to be public or recognized. It could be quiet, ordinary, yet extraordinary in its impact. Love didn't have to be perfect or grand. It could be simple, steadfast, and human. And kindness didn't require applause, and it only required a willing heart. When he entered his apartment that evening, Lily ran to greet him. "Daddy, I drew a picture of you saving the lady again." He laughed, kneeling to see her drawing. A car, flames, and a figure holding someone safe in their arms. "That's amazing, Lily. You're really good at this." She hugged him tightly. "I want to be like you, Daddy." Ethan kissed her forehead. "You already are, sweetheart. You already are." Later that night, as he looked out of the window at the city lights, he thought of Amelia, of the families they were helping, and of the life he had been given despite its trials. He felt a profound gratitude for every moment, for every risk he had taken, and for every connection he had made along the way. He realized that life's unexpected twists, the fire, the loss, the chance encounters, and had led him here. And it was more than survival. It was a life of meaning, purpose, and love. And though he never sought recognition, fame, or reward, Ethan knew one truth clearly. The moments when he chose courage, kindness, and action would always ripple far beyond what he could see, touching lives in ways that would last forever. The single-father janitor had started as a quiet, unseen figure, carrying the weight of loss and responsibility alone. But through his courage, compassion, and selflessness, he had not only saved a life but had changed the world for countless others. And in doing so, had found a new life filled with hope, connection, and the profound knowledge that sometimes ordinary people can become heroes in the most extraordinary ways. Ethan held Lily close one last time that night before bed. "Sleep well, sweetie. Remember, no matter what happens, we can always make a difference," Lily whispered. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Lily," he replied, holding her tight. "And we'll keep making a difference together." Outside, the city lights shone brightly, reflecting in the quiet streets and the puddles from earlier rain. Inside, a father and daughter slept peacefully, unaware that the world was better because of them, because of courage, kindness, and love that refused to be unnoticed.